Thanks for everybody coming tonight, and to all of you who are going to view this in the future. I certainly want to preface by saying, if this is ringing true to you tonight and you're thinking, I don't know how to handle this anymore, you are not alone. Separation anxiety right now is the number one issue that we are dealing with pets because of numerous things, but mostly because of the pandemic. And so many brand new pet parents and brand new pets who have been forced, and also by choice, have been together nonstop 24/7 for months and months and months. And so when that happens, and we don't, even veterinarians like myself, when we don't give dogs the ability to understand independence and how to settle, and that us leaving is not the end of the world and us coming back is not the end of the world, they are confused and become incredibly codependent on the visual sight and sometimes even touch of us to feel settled. And so I hope tonight we will start our journey together, because this is truly, as we were just talking about, this is a journey. I wish that I could wave a magic wand across this Zoom call and make all of your problems completely disappear by morning. But I will tell you that unfortunately that's unrealistic. I've been working with some families for weeks and months sometimes to try to find what really will work. However, we are all tonight taking a step in the right direction to get some new behaviors established at home and learn about some resources and other tips and tricks to help make life more settled for your pet and for you. Because separation anxiety is not just anxiety for your dog, it is anxiety for the human and the family that sometimes has to experience that. So, it would be wonderful if every single time you left and every single time you came home, this is what your dog was doing, independently, sleeping peacefully on a couch and dreaming about whatever Kong toy they might win tonight, hint, hint. But unfortunately, this is not often the case. And in fact, this is sort of the view that if we're closing the door, we kind of see is our dog wondering with anxious eyes, oh, mom's leaving, dad's leaving. Oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then it's more often than not, I live in Chicago where a lot of people are in apartments and high rises. I'll get the call, my neighbor has complained about me. My dog's been barking for 3 hours. I come home, I find, pee and poop all over the house. It's destroyed my brand new shoes and my purse and the baseboards. And now I'm going to have to move out and I don't know how to survive. If that sounds familiar, again, you are not alone. It's an incredibly common call that veterinarians receive. And it's unfortunately the number one behavior question and issue that we see in veterinary hospitals. So just to clear everybody's mind frame, and so they're all aligned on the same page, what is separation anxiety? So it is a clinical diagnosis. This is the most extreme form of anxiety in dogs. And it's applied to a lot of different behaviors that we can see when a dog is, quote unquote, left behind by their human. Now, that could be you literally leaving them behind in the living room while you go to the bathroom, or it could be you left for work in the morning and didn't come home for 12 hours, or anywhere in between. It's just the visual sight of being left that triggers the behaviors that we see with separation anxiety. And like I said, if I had a magic wand and could fix separation anxiety overnight, I would be the most successful veterinarian to ever have been born on this planet. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist, but it is a three-pronged approach, we call it, because we have to do three separate things to help get resolution of this. One is behavioral modification. I'm going to talk about that tonight. Two are some environment changes. And then three, often we do have to intervene pharmaceutically or with medical therapy to help these dogs break the negative bonds of anxiety that they have in their brain. They're actually electrical connections that are formed that are unhealthy. The medication breaks those bonds temporarily, so it allows a dog to learn new behaviors. So often severe cases cannot be even remotely improved until we also add that in to allow them to learn. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. So what dogs are most likely to have separation anxiety? Well, shelter and rescue dogs are often high on that list. many times because they have unknown histories and we don't know why they're back at the shelter, or they've had previous behaviors that have not been worked on. And so they come to a new family with these learned bad habits, essentially, that just get exacerbated over time. Certainly, the pandemic did no favors to us in this area because so many people worked remote, so many people couldn't travel, so many people, understandably, I did too, found comfort in being around their pets at home, and so chose willingly to spend all of their free time snuggling with their dogs. And that sounds like heaven to me, but unfortunately, there comes a point where that unfortunately doesn't allow dogs to have independence and understand separation, healthy separation. So the other part is young to middle-aged adults. We rarely see separation anxiety in puppies because, to be honest, they can't form those connections yet until they're usually a young adult, meaning their brain does not make the connection of you leaving with a negative separation. It's a learned behavior, which means it has to happen over and over and over for them to develop this anxious habit. Now, that doesn't mean that if you have a senior dog that was from a breeder that you couldn't have separation anxiety, but these are definitely the most common. So what might we see at home if your dog has separation anxiety? Well, these are the most common behaviors. And again, these will happen when you are not there. So a lot of times we come home to finding, dogs that are chewing up shoes or baseboards or furniture or table legs or, really expensive purses or backpacks or whatever is on the ground. Often we hear reports that these dogs are vocalizing, they're barking, whining, howling, or all combinations. The other urination and defecation, of course, we can come home to find evidence of, but the pacing and panting, we may not know is happening unless we have cameras that are watching those dogs, or we have them wearing a monitor like a whistle or a voice or any of what we call the wearable collars that track movement. Or we come home and find wet spots from dogs drooling, or maybe it's wearing out, even I've had some dogs that pace so much that they actually wear a pacing pattern into the rugs and carpeting. So often we don't see those immediately. We have to investigate a little bit. But if your dog has any of these behaviors when you leave, your dog does have some level of separation anxiety. And typically this happens fairly immediately from when a human leaves. And again, that could just be leaving the room. More often it's leaving the home, up to 30 minutes. A lot of people ask me, well, my dog is fine if I leave them out, but if I try to put them into a crate when I leave, this is when all this happens. And we'll talk about crating in a minute, but dogs with severe separation anxiety, I never recommend immediately using a crate, especially if they're worse in the crate, because I cannot tell you how many times, unfortunately, I've had dogs come in with broken teeth from trying to chew at crates to get out because their anxiety is so severe. So I'll give you some other options for that. But again, crating in a severe case would not be an ideal choice to help prevent pacing or panting. So let's talk about some initial things that you can even do starting tonight to try and make your home set up to start on an improvement journey for dogs with separation anxiety. So the first and most important thing relating again to crate is creating a safe space for your dog. Now, this is not a safe space that you choose. This is a safe space that they have chosen and shown you. So as an example, this dog is choosing to go to his or her bed in the bedroom. And that's where this dog has relaxed body posture. Now that could be very unique for your dog. So my dog loves to be in bathrooms. I don't know why. But that's where she likes to hang when she's by herself, and totally fine with it. That's her choice. Some dogs may want to be on your bed. Some dogs may want to be in a guest room. Some dogs have a favorite chair, whatever it is. But that's where that safe space should be. It's not what you choose. And if it's in a place like a kitchen or in a room where there's only a door to close, we want to invest in a very tall gate rather than shutting a door in a small space or a crate. Shutting a door in a small space has the same visual trigger that a crate door does. So for these dogs, again, doing like a lot of times I'll say to people, get 2 baby gates and put them on top of each other in the door frame. That way the dog can see through them, does not feel, again, necessarily so restricted, but also is secure in that space. Now we need to dog proof that area. So if you have a younger dog who is very destructive when you leave, you want to pick up all your shoes, you want to pick up your laptop, any cell phones and things that they can chew on. But again, this is a space your dog has chosen and shown you. So very, very important to make sure that that happens. Now, I do bring this up right at the beginning, drug therapy, and talking to your veterinarian and your care coaches can certainly assist in trying to connect you appropriately. A lot of people say to me, well, Dr. Marks, I don't want to put my dog on any medication. Like, why is that even necessary? So without getting into brain physiology too in depth, like I mentioned, when your dog learns something that you don't want them to learn, so let's say peeing when you leave, and that is because of anxiety, the brain actually has electrical currents that form what's called a synapse. So it's a connection essentially in their brain. And every time they urinate, it defaults to this bad connection, meaning if my dog Samantha was urinating in the house and every time I left, she did, and nothing changed, right? So there was no direction to her on how to not do that. Every single time she did that, that connection gets stronger and stronger and stronger, sort of like a muscle that you work out, which means every time you try to break it, it's harder and harder and harder to change it. The other thing about electrical connections in the brain is that they are very, very strong opposition to learning new ones. So in other words, if your dog has been chewing shoes for 5 years, every single day, and you're on tonight and you're like, tomorrow is going to be the day he doesn't chew a shoe, it's going to be almost impossible to change that without breaking the bad connection in the brain using medical therapy and then allowing him to make new healthy connections because of the medical therapy. The other thing is that many of these dogs, their anxiety is so severe that we need to what's called raise the threshold inside their brain, meaning that we want to make it harder for them to be anxious. So if your dog is chewing and pacing and peeing and pooping and barking and yowling and doing everything on that list, and all of a sudden we expect them the next day to do none of that, it's again virtually impossible for their brain to not react to the slightest little trigger of anxiety. Some of the drug therapy that we use makes it harder for them to be anxious, which makes it harder for them to show these clinical signs, which means they're more relaxed, which is our goal. So talking to a veterinarian about which of these medical therapies is right for them, whether it's a daily medication like Prozac, which is often used temporarily to help them learn new things, or something what we call situational, like trazodone. A lot of times we will use that just before we're going to leave so that they have a few hours of just calm behavior. And then a lot of times using pheromone therapy. I have here Adaptil Calm, which is a wonderful product. It's a collar that gives continuous relaxation for 30 days. So super easy for pet parents to grab this, put it on, and have, again, 24/7 calming pheromones. These are synthetic compounds that mimic the calming hormones in dogs and let them relax when you leave. A lot of dogs need all of these things, but if you are new in the journey and you're like, my dog's okay, but just seems to be a little barky when I leave, this is a great opportunity to start pheromone therapy. It's very, very effective and helpful. There's also diffusers like Glade plugins that you can put into the room that they choose to relax them. There's sprays you can put on bedspreads and blankets and towels, all different types of forms, again, to help them relax. There's also a large subset of supplements out there. And again, I can't include all of them because there are so many, and nutraceuticals. But again, this is a great conversation to start with your care coach to help direct where we can have a veterinarian, again, assist as a team to figure out what strategy is going to be best for your dog. Now, we have to track our progress. This is essential because behavior therapy, we don't get to say like weight loss therapy where your dog started at 60 pounds and should be 48 pounds. And you just did a weigh-in this month and you're at 57 pounds and you're on the right track. Behavior therapy, we have to get a baseline of what our dog is doing. So again, this is where video is really, really helpful. It doesn't take much to set up a camera. Baby monitors work awesome if you're a parent and you have an old one, or you can borrow one from someone. There's also ways, different apps to do that, and certainly ones on your TV. But we want to get, if possible, about an hour's worth of video when you leave, so that we can really see what your dog is doing. Maybe your dog is really comfortable, but then all of a sudden, here's the dog barking next door, and that's what's triggering them to get all anxious. Maybe your dog would be fine if there wasn't your cat that was running loose. So maybe they need to be separated. There's lots of different triggers dogs can have for anxiety, but we need to know what those are. So one of the most common triggers, actually, for most people, is picking up your keys or putting on your shoes. Dogs learn to associate that with, uh-oh, mom or dad is leaving. And that becomes a trigger for anxiety. So one easy thing that you can do, if that's what you identify, is I will often tell people to put their keys on their belt loop and walk around with them all day long. So the sound of keys doesn't become a trigger anymore. And as we'll talk about with desensitization, it just becomes part of their day. Same thing with shoes. My dog gets very triggered from shoes. So a lot of times what I have to do is put my shoes on, walk downstairs, take my shoes off, walk over here, put my shoes on, walk over there, put my shoes. It sounds tedious, but it does desensitize over time dogs to that trigger. So I think it's incredibly important to have this video monitoring, because a lot of times you'll find triggers you never would know. And then we try to monitor every 2 weeks and also journal. Especially if you have a dog, what we call eliminations, a dog that's urinating or defecating in the house. Really important to know when you're walking that dog and when that dog is peeing or pooping appropriately outside. So as an example, if the only time your dog pees in the house is when it's raining, which my dog does because she hates the rain, even though I got her a raincoat, that does not equal separation anxiety. It means that your dog is triggered by wet weather, and we just have to find a different option. But if you walk your dog and literally 10 minutes before you leave, you've walked your dog and your dog has peed and pooped outside, and then all of a sudden you grab your keys and you put on your shoes and you start to leave, and you get down the hall and you can hear your dog barking and scratching at the door, and you come home and find peeing and pooping, that's when we need to talk about how can we change your, what we call exit and entering. So making these what we call non-events, and I'll explain that more in a second, so that your dog doesn't know and doesn't care when you leave. And that's hardest on us. That is so hard as a parent to not, and I'll demonstrate behavior that happens all the time, to not do this when you leave. And that's, again, part of desensitization. But before I do that quickly, I want to talk about independence. Independence for children and independence for pets is an essential part of them having a settled and peaceful existence. It sounds counterintuitive because we as humans have such a strong human animal bond that part of why we have pets is because they give us unconditional love. And no matter what our day is, no matter how bad everything seems, we can count on going to our dog and getting love and demanding it and never letting go for 9 hours. Unfortunately, that is a selfish way for us to manage a dog with separation anxiety, because they have to understand that they can choose on their own right to be independent, and that's okay. Meaning they can choose to go to their bed or their settle mat or whatever it is and have time on their own, and we should accept that and promote it and support it. Even if in that moment you just broke up with your boyfriend, or you had a car accident and you're like, I need my dog to snuggle me. In that moment, when they choose independence, we have to reward them, because that is a healthy way for them to live. So what that means is, if you have that wonderful bed, or what we are going to encourage is as called a settle mat. So this is a mat, a rug, a small bed, whatever you want to call it in the house, that gets the yummiest treats placed on it all the time. So it might be a Kong filled with peanut butter. It might be a frozen cream cheese cup. It might be a lick mat with yummy Cool Whip. It might be a Frosty Paw, whatever it is, but it is a treat your dog will never say no to. And when they choose to go to that mat with that yummy treat, they get tremendous amount of praise, because that is a choice of redirecting from an unpleasant, meaning they're worried that you're going to leave, to something pleasant. Yummy treats like this actually cause a release of something in the brain called endorphins, which we have as well. And those are the happy chemicals. That's like, I've just fallen in love, or somebody gave me flowers, or I'm a secret admirer, you know, like I won the lottery, all the good stuff that makes us super happy. That's what dogs get from having these super yummy treats. So we start off by telling them just visually that they have a mat. So getting a mat and putting that in a very safe place at the house, and then starting to leave them super yummy treats there. And the cue here, and the key to success, is that when we bring them there, initially it's on leash, because we want them to stay there and have a visual association of something positive, that yummy treat, with the visual cue of the mat. Eventually what will happen is that dog, you know, and again, you can have different cues. Some people say, go to your settle, or go to your mat, or go to your happy place, whatever that is for you. But eventually your dog will choose to go there because it's something super yummy and wonderful. And you can take the leash off and they will choose to be there on their own accord. And again, I would be lying to you if I said this is going to happen tonight. It takes time and practice. But these, again, are things environmentally that you can start setting up in your home so that it can be successful for you. This is probably the most important human component of getting a dog to get through separation anxiety, and that's desensitizing your departure, which a lot of people also call making it a non-event when you leave. So what I mean by that is, when you start your process of leaving the home, or again, in severe cases, leaving the room, your dog has picked up subtle cues well before you even knew you were doing them, and starts to become anxious. And any anxious or fearful memory in a dog, a human, an elephant, whatever it is stored in this little pea-sized part of your brain called the amygdala. And that is basically a snapshot database of every fearful or anxious experience we have experienced and that they have experienced. It never goes away. So the next time you leave, they are like, oh, last time mom left, it was awful. I peed, I panted, she didn't come back. It was horrible. So the next exit, it's even worse. And that's why separation anxiety and many anxiety disorders get more intense and severe over time, because it just builds on those fearful memories. So we have to change the ritual, which means that if you're used to leaving for work, and let's say you work 10 minutes away, and you're used to leaving 5 minutes before, unfortunately, you can't anymore, because we need to change the ritual and literally try to almost confuse your dog as to what routine is. It sounds counterintuitive here too, because if you've ever dealt with an anxious human, or in my case, I have an anxious child, they teach you routine is essential, that they thrive on routine. But what we're trying to do is not trigger anxious behavior. And we know for them, the anxious trigger is us leaving. So what we do is we create no routine, which means if you're getting ready to leave, you might want to put the food on the settle mat 45 minutes before. And then maybe 40 minutes before, you're going to get your bag together and your keys, but then you're going to sit back down on the couch and scroll through Instagram for a few minutes. And then maybe you'll go grab something from the fridge and have a little bit of a snack before you leave. And, oh, you know what? I think I'm going to check email for a little bit. I'm going to go check my email. So your dog all of a sudden is like, wait, normally mom grabs her keys, grabs her bag, and just walks out and gives me my peanut butter. But now she's still here. And wait, she went in another room. And now, wait, her shoes are still on. Where are her keys? And soon enough, you're just going to leave. So the hardest part for me as a veterinarian, but also as a dog mom, is changing our vocal delivery to our dog. I, before becoming a veterinarian, did what most people do, which is, oh my God, Samantha, I'm never going to leave you. I'll be home in like 5 minutes. Oh my God, you're such a good girl. Okay, I'll be right back. Wait, I'll be right back. I promise. I love you. I see people smiling. Right? It's common, right? And the same thing happens when we come home. I'm so sorry I left you. I love you. And, when we do that, that is probably one of the worst things that we could do as pet parents, because it tells them the only time life is good is when the human is home. So instead, what we want to do is literally not say or do anything related to our dog when we leave for at least 30 minutes. So literally nothing. And when we leave, we don't acknowledge it. We don't say bye. We don't look at our dog. We don't pet our dog. We just walk out the door. Same thing happens in reverse when we come home. So when we come home, a common thing is come to me. Oh my God, I love you. I missed you. Oh. Instead, we're going to come home. We're going to take off our shoes. We're going to put our bag away. We're going to get a drink from the fridge. We're going to check our mail. We're going to email. We're going to call a friend. And then we're going to acknowledge our dog. It sounds ridiculous, but I will tell you, it absolutely is one of the keys to success. And just doing that in itself can make a significant difference. Now, that can't happen from, if you have a dog that has severe anxiety, you cannot do that tomorrow. We have to start briefly without leaving, which means leaving the room and waiting for calm behavior, or walking out your door into the hallway and walking back in, or walking to a neighbor's door in your apartment complex and walking back in, or walking to your car and walking back in. All of those things are what we have to start with, because if we don't, what ends up happening is we take too many steps forward and we don't allow that dog the time to actually learn this the right way. So we monitor for calm behavior. And if you went in the other room, and your dog was calm, and you went out in the hall and your dog was calm, you went to your car, dog was calm, but then you went for 5 minutes down to a friend's house and your dog wasn't calm, we got to take some steps back and work. But desensitizing and changing your ritual can literally make a significant difference of all of these things, even through the weekend. And then the final thing I just want to leave with, and then I'm happy to ask or answer any questions that are out there, is this is not a disease, and really no diseases should be included in this, but especially here, this is not a disease that we can give punishment. So I think it's a common response to come home and find, 3 piles of pee and diarrhea all over the house. And one historical way of handling that was to take your dog and put the dog's face into that urine. First, let me say that is historical for a reason. It is absolutely not recommended now. But more importantly, dogs don't learn that way. That is not a training method that is effective for dogs. What we want to do is different types of conditioning. Conditioning is a way to direct an unwanted behavior to a wanted behavior through the use of different training techniques, medical therapy, environmental enrichment. Again, trading out something that's not a high reward for a high reward treat. So the natural response in the brain, again, those endorphins can work. But please do not, even though the tendency is there to be very frustrated, I've been there with you, please avoid punishment, because these are anxious and fearful dogs. Punishment exacerbates their fear and anxiety and makes this disease much, much harder to treat. So do your best, because our goal, of course, is this, right? A dog who is like, okay, mom went shopping. Who cares? Shopping, schmopping. I'm just going to hang out on my bed. When mom gets home, she's going to, hang out for a minute, and then she's going to call me over and we're going to hang out and watch Bachelor in Paradise. Like, that's our goal. Maybe not the Bachelor in Paradise part, but it's our goal to have calm, relaxed, independent dogs in our home. And like I said, some of the hardest part of this is on us having restraint and understanding that dogs choosing independence does not equal them not loving us anymore. Dogs choosing independence is a great sign that your dog is mentally and emotionally healthy. And that's what we have to keep telling ourselves. Not that, why is my dog hiding in the bedroom and not loving me? we want them to choose that from time to time. It's a great sign if your dog chooses alone time and then comes back to you. Super, super healthy. And we want to keep rewarding that. I'm going to turn it over to Georgia real quick, because I think we're going to just go through a little bit more about the lifestyle journey. And then I know we have a giveaway
Yes.
about as well.
Thank you, Dr. Marks. That was wonderful. If anyone has any questions, you can post them in the chat right now, or feel free to unmute and ask your question. I'll give a moment just to see if anybody's got questions to ask.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Sure.
go for it.
Okay, so I've worked at home for like 7 years, pretty much as long as I've had my dog. And one of the things I've noticed, like he doesn't get anxious, like, and like tear stuff up. So I'm not as worried about that, but I can just tell, like, if I'm in a different room and I have my doors closed in my office, he comes up and like bangs on the door, like, let me in. I don't know where you are. He's going to both my doors, like back and forth. I'm just wondering, like, while I'm working outside of enrichment things, you know, things like that, that I try and, like, I go hide treats and stuff like that to keep him busy. Is there anything else that I could be doing to help him feel independent and like settle outside of where I am all the time?
I think I would try baby gates. So having a divider between you and the door frame where he can see through, but that he can have his space on the other side, like a settle mat or a bed of his choice with yummy treats, where he can see you per se, but doesn't have to be next to you. That would be my starter to try to avoid the banging on the door, because I'm assuming that you probably at some point open the door.
Well, I have French doors, so he can see me.
Okay. But we do open the door at some point?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they, dogs are really good at training us too.
Right.
Whereas we should be training them. So I guess I would say this: if he just bangs on the door, comes in and settles down and hangs out, I don't know if that's really disruptive to your lifestyle, then we can certainly talk about it. I think what I would try to do is think of ways to find another area in the house that he chooses from time to time that could be your settle mat.
Okay. Yeah.
Because just to kind of give him another choice on his own accord to find a yummy treat and spend time that's not in visual sight of you. But I guess what I would say is, do you find when you leave the home that he does any of those behaviors?
He paces. He goes from the front window where he can see us leave to the garage door and back and forth. I can see him because we put up cameras when he was little, because we just wanted to make sure he wasn't destroying our house and when we weren't there.
Yeah.
So we can see him, but it's that and barking. He doesn't really bark out the window that often when we're home, but if we're not here, he's constantly at the window barking.
Yeah. So those do apply. And I certainly would start with desensitizing your departures, changing the ritual. I would consider, because it's not severe at this point, right? I mean, it's definitely there, but not to the point where he's, breaking his teeth off in a crate and,
Right.
blooding his paws and things. But I think intervening with supplements like the pheromones, some of the relaxation supplements, even talking about, maybe getting a situational medication from time to time to relax him, I think would be helpful. I also do think that, again, changing up your ritual and looking for his triggers would be very, very helpful. So,
Okay.
Watch him. And is it your keys? Is it your shoes? Is it your bag? Is it time of day? Do you use a vocal term that cues him? Because that's also part of that desensitization, is changing those up. So all of a sudden, if let's say you're like, I'm going to work or whatever you always say, not that you do, but like that as an example, he might be waiting for work and all of a sudden he's like, oh, mom leaves. I hate it. I'm stressed. And then just works himself up. Right. That just stops. We don't ever say that word anymore. And remember, we don't want to cue him that you are leaving. So from 30 minutes on, you literally ignore him. And same thing when you come home, is you ignore that he's waiting for a response, that it's only okay when mom's here. And you're going to tell him you were fine. I'm okay.
Yeah.
And then when he's calm, then you greet him.
We need to work on that because we haven't gone a lot of places in the last year, but
Yeah.
so now when we go somewhere, we just usually take him with us. So he's like never by himself.
Yeah. So I mean, and if that's the case, which I think is also very common today, you know, a lot of people have changed their travel plans to include their pets. And I mean, it's a new way of living. It's fine if your dog is not showing signs of separation anxiety. So like some dogs are cool being companions and they come home and they're like, I've had enough of you and I'm going to go in my other room. Right. But other dogs have anxious tendencies. And if they are showing those anxious tendencies, that's where you do have to create some separation. So it doesn't have to be that, you know, every single trip you don't take him, but you might just want to say, you know what, I'm going to just walk around the block myself and come back and see what happens with that, where he all of a sudden has 10 minutes alone. What happens in those short, kind of spans. And if he's really pacing and drooling and just can't handle even that, that's when we step back to even just changing rooms and waiting for him to settle. Because that means we've gone too far, too fast.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Any other questions tonight before we wrap up and discuss the benefits of AskVet? All right. Well, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out through Discord. If you're an AskVet member, you can chat in with our vets or use the messaging function to connect with our care coaches. Which is one of the wonderful benefits of being an AskVet member. I'm a care coach, and we've got one of our other care coaches, Emily, on here tonight. And we provide support for really so many different aspects of animal care outside of veterinary medicine. We provide personalized pet plans where we work together with you to figure out your goals as a pet parent and create a plan that works for your needs. And so many people have spoken with us about overcoming separation anxiety. So if that's something that you are working through, please let us know. We would love to connect and set up a good plan for you. And on top of that, we've got 24/7 vet support. So any time of day, we have veterinarians online, on call, ready to talk about any problem you've got. And on top of that, we have the rainy day fund. So with every month of membership, we contribute $45 to a rainy day fund. And if you chat with one of our vets and they recommend that you bring your pet to an ER and you go to the ER within 10 hours of that recommendation, you can then draw from those funds. We also send out different diagnostic kits in our welcome package. Right now, it's a urinalysis kit where you can perform an at-home urinalysis and take photos of the results and chat in with our vets, and they'll help provide the diagnosis for you. We also have a partnership with Pet Care RX, and they have really incredible discounts on pet food, medicines, and toys as well. I think KJ linked the Adaptil pheromone spray there. There are some really incredible discounts, and you get a free annual membership as an AskVet member. We also get to host events like this, and we advertise them in our Clubhouse, which is our pet parent community where we can share tips and tricks and, connect with other pet parents and discuss struggles or successes, cute pictures, as well as we now have wonderful channels. So if your pet is going through a tough time with a recent diagnosis, you can chat with other pet parents who have done that as well and connect with veterinarians and pet experts and care coaches. It's a really fun place to be. And we've got a giveaway tonight. So I'm going to post our giveaway link here in the chat. When you click this link, it'll bring you to a page that looks like this. If you just put in your name, your email address, and give us a rating, let us know what you thought of this webinar tonight. And just a little question of, what are you struggling with as a pet parent currently? And we'll reach out to you tomorrow to see who won, and we'll be sending you a Kong toy in the mail. So any other questions tonight before we wrap up? Thank you so much for joining us. All right. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Hello.
Thank you guys. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Dr. Marks.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Marks.
My pleasure.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.